Good morning. Welcome to the meeting of the Combined Fire Authority. I would like to start with the first item, which is election of chairman. Please could I seek nominations for the position of chairman?
May I propose Councillor Rushton?
And can I have a seconder?
Happy to second.
Sorry, could I have your name, Councillor?
Councillor Champion, happy to second.
Champion, Councillor. Are there any further nominations? No? Right. I now declare Mr. Rushton Chairman of the Combined Fire Authority. Over to you, Mr. Rushton.
Thank you very much, members, and welcome. A couple of things. Anna said something about microphones when we want to speak. Just want to explain to members, if they want to speak, what they have to do, Anna.
Yes, I will do. If you do want to speak and you need to catch the chairman's attention, please put your hand up. If you're in one of the seats at the back that doesn't have a microphone, there's a microphone here where the yellow box is, just to the right of that. When asked to speak by the chairman, you come up, use the microphone there, stand there and use the microphone to ask your question, and then use the antibac wipes just to clean it down when you've finished, ready for the next speaker. That would be lovely. Thank you.
The best we can do in these COVID times. I know it's all a bit disjointed. It will be kind of hard to see everyone, but if you keep your hand up, I'll do my best to make sure, and Anna will be watching out as well. Don't forget also to get your declarations to Anna, and I presume the groups have got their declarations to you already to say which group you're in. Thank you. So welcome to the annual meeting of the Fire Authority. It's Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland Combined Authority. It's broadcast live on YouTube and is available for viewing after the meeting. The link is on the CFA website. This is the first time we've met in person for more than a year. Due to the continued restrictions, as you can see, we're spread out ridiculously, and all offices are online. For new members, I know Callum's done a bit of training for you, but anybody who wants to go and look around a fire station or meet fire crew or anything that any new member is interested in, just contact Callum. As you know, he's keen to help you. Try and use your microphones when you speak, and of course switch them off when you've done. Again, mobile phones, switch them off or put them to silent. And we've got a lot of new members on this committee, so I'm going to ask new members to introduce themselves, which will be a bit awkward for the ones that have to move forward, but we'll give you some time. And please note that Mr. Brecken is substituting for Mr. Lovegrove, and Craig Smith is substituting for Mr. Gatoraya, or as I call him, Kamal. So I'll now move around the room, and we'll I think for the sake of ease, I'll start on the left and then move around. So it's over to you. I'm sorry I don't know your name. Oh, I do. Mr. Fonseca.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm Councillor Fonseca. I'm from Leicester City Council. Thank you.
Sue, we know you.
Me. Yeah, I'm Councillor Susan Barton. I'm Leicester City Councillor for Braunston Park Raleigh Fields Ward.
Nobody knows you, Betty. Go next, Betty.
I'm Councillor Betty Newton. Thank you.
I'm now going to hear Mr. Brecken.
Yeah, Councillor Lee Brecken, so substituting for Councillor Lovegrove this morning.
Joe.
Joe Wilson, Leicestershire County Council, Melton Wolds Division.
I better do you next, Councillor Panting. So I can't see you, otherwise I'll miss you.
It's okay. Oh, hello. I'm Councillor Elaine Pantling for Leicester City Council, and the ward I serve is Ayres Monsell.
Thank you. Ken.
Thank you. It's Councillor Kenneth Bull. I represent Rutland County Council, and in my ward, I'm the North Mountain ward around Rutland Water. Thank you.
Ross.
Good morning, my name is Ross and I represent Mallory in West Leicestershire.
Thanks for that, Ross. Barry?
Barry Champion representing Market Harbour East.
Dan?
Dan Grimley representing Birstall Division.
Okay, so I think I've got Councillor Varland next.
I'm Councillor Mahendra Walan, so in Leicester City and from Belgrave Ward. Thank you.
Councillor Bhatia.
Hi, my name is Councillor Hemant Bhatia. I'm from Leicester City Council and I serve Beaumont Lease. Thank you.
We'll do you next, Craig. Thanks for doing that microphone one.
Good morning. I'm Councillor Craig Smith. I represent Colville North and I'm substituting this morning for Kamal.
And you, Neil. And we've done all the mobile microphone ones.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Neil Bannister, Broughton Astley Division of Leicestershire County Council.
Now you, Stuart.
Yeah, Stuart Bray. I represent St Mary's Division, which is Hinckley Town Centre and a small part of Burbage.
And finally you, Bill.
Chair, Bill Bolter, South and West Wixton.
Okay, thank you very much for doing that. We've also got with us today Matthew Wallace. He's the Director of Estates and Building Services at the City Council. He'll be presenting his report to us in due course. So agenda item 2 is election of Vice Chairman. I'll move Councillor Pantling. Can somebody second?
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. No other nominations. All in favour? Thank you. Apologies for absence. We've received them from Councillor Lovegrove, as I said, Lee substituting, and Councillor Gatoraya and Craig substituting. Declarations of interest. I understand, Joe, you want to make one?
Yeah, I've thought about this hard, Chair. It's maybe one that I shouldn't, maybe not necessary to make, but Anna, your Democratic clerk, and I only live about 100 metres apart on a very sparsely little country lane, so we know each other well. Thank you.
Okay, that's only personal, it's noted. Will you still be close when you've moved?
I'll be 200 metres then.
Thank you, Joe. Chairman's announcements. Anna has circulated them, so we'll take them as read if that's okay with you guys. It's a bit of brevity that goes a long way. Public participation rules, CFA, blah blah blah. No questions. First, we need to confirm the minutes of the combined fire authority meeting held on the 10th of February as a true and correct record. These are on pages 5 to 16 of your pack, and I move that the minutes of the meeting be taken as read, confirmed and signed. Can somebody who's here, Betty will second them. All in favour? Thank you. Now we've got the minutes of the Corporate Governance Committee meeting on the 20th of January 2021. These are pages 17 to 22 of your agenda pack. I think you chaired it, Ken?
I'll move those, Chairman.
Somebody else who was there? Betty again. Excellent. All in favour? Super. Agenda item 10 is the schedule of nominations and appointments for the municipal year 21-22. These are on pages 23 to 26. Lauren Haslam, who's online, will present the report. Over to you, Lauren.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Chair, and good morning, CFA members. It's a very short report, simply asking the CFA to approve the nominations and appointments which are set out on the appendix to the report, showing the membership of the Corporate Governance Committee, Employment Committee, Pensions Board, and the Equality Champion and outside bodies. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I move that the nomination and appointments to the committees of the Combined Fire Authority set out in the appendix to the report for the municipal year 21-22 be approved. Can you second, Vice Chairman? All in favour? Thank you very much. Next is an urgent action taken by the Monitoring Officer and Treasurer, which is the recruitment of the Chief Fire and Rescue Officer. This is on pages 27 to 30 of your agenda, and Lauren will talk to it. Lauren?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to advise members of the urgent action taken between meetings in consultation with the Chairman and Vice Chairman. The action relates to the arrangements for the recruitment of the Assistant Chief Fire Officer posts following changes as a result of resignations within the service. There are two posts currently filled on an interim basis, and the desire is to recruit permanently into those posts to achieve some stability within the service. The action agreed with the chair and vice chairman was to begin the recruitment process, shortly to advertise the posts and recruit before a member panel in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. A member panel has been established, and in due course the recommendation of that panel will be presented back to the CFA at its meeting in September, with a view to the permanent appointments being made at that stage. So I'm simply asking that the CFA note that urgent action has been taken, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. I move that the urgent action taken by the Monitoring Officer and Treasurer to put in place arrangements for the recruitment of the Assistant Chief Fire and Rescue Officer following the departure of the previous post be noted. Can you second, Vice Chairman?
Seconded, Chair.
All in favour? Thank you very much. We now move on to a next report. Urgent action again taken by the Chief Fire and Rescue Officer, Firefighter Pension Scheme Age Discrimination Remedy. This is on pages 31 to 36 of your agenda, and Callum says he's still interim. Well, he's still interim. The interim Fire and Rescue Officer will present the report. Callum.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, members. The report is presented to you today to note the urgent action taken by the Chief Fire Officer with permission from the Chair and the Vice Chair of the authority at the time. The action was deemed necessary between meetings to mitigate a number of risks presented to the CFA due to the evolving position around firefighter pension scheme and some outcomes from some ongoing court cases following on from the central government's decision in 2015. The matter around pensions is incredibly complex, and I don't propose to go into that in this meeting unless members would like me to. And the position is not yet finished, so it's still evolving. However, we needed to take urgent action, which is covered in paragraphs 2B, 1 through 5. That satisfies the immediate pressures and removes the risk of litigation against the Combined Fire Authority from the Fire Brigades Union at this time. Obviously, as the situation continues, the updates will be presented to the local pension board, but I ask at this time that members note the urgent action taken by myself with permission of the Chair and the Vice Chair. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Callum. Well, I'm not going to read all that out, so I'll move the recommendation starting at 2AB, Roman numerals 1 to 4, and over the page C. Do you understand what I'm saying, Vice Chairman?
Yes, I do, Chair.
Can you second?
Yes, I second that, Chair.
Thank you. All in favour? Thank you very much. Now we have the Pension Fund Scheme Management Treasurer arrangements. This is on 37 to 40 of your agenda, and hopefully we've got Alison Greenhill, who is the Treasurer to the Fire and Rescue Officer and is also Chief Operating Officer at the City Council. So Alison, good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you, and morning, members of CFA. This report's in front of you really to make sure that we are that you are very clear, and also we are abiding by a constitution to be clear on the treasurer role and the scheme manager role. So I was promoted to Chief Operating Officer at the City Council at the beginning of March, and at the moment I'm retaining the statutory Section 151 officer role at the City Council for the foreseeable future. However, in practice, being Section 151 officer for the City and for the Fire Authority and for Chief Operating Officer for the City Council, as you can imagine, is quite a lot. Colin Sharp, who many of you all know, has worked and supported me in my treasurer role for the Fire Authority, and indeed is my Deputy Director of Finance at the City Council. So this report really is just making sure we formalise the arrangements that I retain the role as Section 151 officer for the CFA, so that means I still have that statutory responsibility, but in practice the support to Callum and yourselves will be provided by Colin Sharp, who's at the meeting today. In terms of the pension scheme, slightly different in that the pension scheme manager needs to be named. So it is quite usual for the Section 151 officer to be the scheme manager, but as Colin is going to be providing that support to Callum, that it follows logically that Colin is the named scheme manager. So this report is making sure from a governance purpose that we're all very clear who is doing what and clear on roles. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we like Colin. Where is he? Does he want to say hello, Colin, so people can see you?
Thank you, Chair. I will do that, and I will also come on camera. Hello. Yeah, Colin Sharp, Deputy Director of Finance at Leicester City Council.
Yep, you've always been a good guy as far as I'm concerned, Colin. So I'll move the recommendations at 2, A, B, C, and note that it's Colin Sharp. Can you second, Vice Chairman?
Yeah, seconded, Chair.
All in favour? There you go, Colin. Welcome to your new job.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair.
14 is the Training Facility Service Leadership and Development Centre project update. This is on 41 to 50 of your agenda. And again, we've got some from the City Council. This is Matthew Wallace. He's the Director of Estates and Building Services at the City Council. He will present the report. Callum, do you want to introduce him or shall I go straight to him?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm more than happy to go straight to Matthew.
Go ahead, Matthew. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Callum. I'm not sure whether we're able to share my screen. It doesn't look like I'm not unable to share my screen at the moment. Anna.
It's okay, I'll load the report.
Thank you. So it's agenda item number 14, pages 41 to 49 in the attached bundle. We really wanted to just update the Combined Fire Authority on progress of the design and build of the service's new training facility. And that's in line with emerging outcomes, and they're emanating from the 2019 estate strategy report and subsequent external market forces that we've seen in the last 18 months. Would you like to just move the slide on one, please? Or can I do it? Oh, I can do it. That's good. Oops. So the objectives of this session is just to give you a quick, short background update of what we've been doing, an update on the current situation and the movement that we've had in the period, and then talk around some of the project risks before moving to the recommendations, which are in the paper as well. So as we move on. So the concept back in 2019, just to give a bit of a background and set the scene, was for an all-encompassing singular site, as per the estate strategy, to encompass all of the training facilities, dirty and clean training facilities for the fire service. As we progressed through the scheme, it did get revised in September 2020, and we were starting to emerge of more of a split site option. And that was just separate the clean and the dirty aspects of it. The dirty to be based at Desford, and that's pending agreement, and the clean to be based over at Loughborough. So very much around a split site objective that we were looking at that stage. The current situation where we find ourselves now is we really started to focus on maximising the use of our existing assets, our existing operational sites, as well as sort of service support service sites as well. And we've had the opportunity as well during COVID to have the senior officers challenge the learning and development team as well around their key requirements. I'm sure you'll all appreciate that there's been a huge change in the way that we work and the world and the way the world operates due to COVID and the pandemic, and people looking at the way that services are delivered. So the proposals for a new site, and that's to incorporate a fire behavioural unit and its associated facilities only. So that's really breaking it out, the dirty trades and the dirty side of the training facility. This is going to be on a reduced footprint, which means that market values also become reduced and more viable in terms of affordability for the Combined Fire Authority. And this reduced scope as well also allows for reduced costs. So we use the existing facilities where we require minor refurbishment, so small amounts of investment going into those existing facilities that we have. So this here is an image of the fire behavioural unit. So the movement, in terms of movement in period, you can see that the fire service has been working up designs for a traditionally constructed fire behavioural unit. Callum, etc., will probably be able to give you far more details about the rationale for the design, but as I understand it, it serves a multitude of training facilities of various different building types. So it is quite quite a hybrid construction and offer suitable training for varied options. It's taken its revised requirements from the learning and development team. The materials and construction costs have all been factored in, and it does cover that broad range of operational exercises. In terms of financials on this, you can see that we've broke it down around the land purchase. Should we require to acquire additional land of 1.25 million, a construction of 1.5 million, and that's for that traditional construction, building fabric, some external works. And then we've got 500,000 of client size costs, which you can see there includes some risk and contingency planning and fees as well. So in terms of contingency planning, obviously there's risk that we can't acquire and find that suitable site in the right location, and so we've got to think of other considerations as well. And so we have been undertaking a pre-planning application for a 4-storey brick built replacement FBU, fire behavioural unit, over at Loughborough, and that has been submitted. And we've got a property agent appointed, and they're currently shortlisting suitable sites to hopefully give us those options to acquire a different site. We're also engaging with other fire services as well to give us that additional resilience around maybe them supporting us with training should something significant go on with the current facilities that we've got. When we look at the main project risks at the moment, we've obviously got Desford as our current site, and we need to agree heads of terms, and we've not got an alternative site identified as of yet in terms of an option if that doesn't come to fruition. We continue to work carefully with Desford and the team there to hopefully get that over the line, but obviously with COVID and the current pandemic, it's not front and centre of their particular priorities, and we're trying to push as hard as we can with that, so we continue to do that. You can see that the H block at Desford needs to be moved by early 21, and the planning conditions for any development, given the nature of activities that are undertaken, is a potential risk for us. Obviously, carbonaceous burning is something that the planners take into consideration significantly. In terms of the recommendations, unfortunately, this slide isn't updating on my screen. I'm not sure whether, yeah, there we go. So there's a couple of recommendations to agree maximising the existing use of our infrastructure as a preferential route, as opposed to the previous split site options and singular option that we talked about previously. And the second recommendation is of the great support that we're currently getting from Leicester County Council's legal team in trying to develop the heads of terms. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm just looking around to see if anybody's got any. Yes, Sue.
Yeah, my question is regarding the continued use of the site near Desford for the dirty training facility. It's a site where local residents have been consulted in the past because we've had objections about smoke and so on, which I'm hoping are rectified. And any new site that we use that would have a change of use would have to go through that whole process about objections to air pollution and smoke again. And so I think because we've already got a unit at Desford, it would be sensible to be able to build on that so that we're not going through the whole process of again in order to be able to get a change of use application for a different site. So even if it's an industrial site which is away from housing, they still have to take into account prevailing wind and so on. So I think it's important that we build on what we already have.
I agree with you, but I think Matt agrees with you. Do you want to reply, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I agree, Councillor Barton, entirely with what you're saying there. Obviously, it's a little bit out of our hands at the moment in terms of renegotiating, and we need to get the right deal for the Combined Fire Authority as well, which we're confident we can get to. It's just taken a prolonged period of time, but we're aware of the risks. One of the other interesting factors to take into account is the new FBU fire behavioural units, more modern ones, are obviously far more environmentally friendly than the old ones of the past. I don't know whether you've got any comments on that at all, Callum, but the modern versions do seem to be more environmentally friendly and hopefully a little bit more sympathetic to neighbours than their older generation.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can do a deal at Desford, but you're going to update us in September anyway, aren't you? I mean, Desford education and suddenly Caterpillar have been super friendly to us, so I think we move the recommendations and speak again in September.
Yes.
If I move them, will you second them, Vice Chairman? They're on A, B, C, D at number 2 on page 41.
Yes, I second them, Chair. I've got them in front of me. Thank you.
Okay, all in favour? Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Next report is on whole-time recruitment. This is on pages 51 to 58 of your agenda, and Callum's going to introduce it. Over to you, Callum.
Thank you, Chairman. This paper is actually twofold in its purpose. First and foremost is to look back at our previous recruitment campaign of last year, just to update the CFAN members on the positive impact that's had on the service, both in terms of equality, diversity, inclusion, but also in the terms of operational numbers. And secondly is looking at the future recruitment needs of the service and the potential and the request for us to be able to recruit in 2022 to continue to be able to maintain service delivery. So if looking back at the previous campaign, and I look back really positively, immense amount of effort from the service, particularly during a difficult time of COVID, but the campaign has received a good response from members of the community, and we've been able to achieve some really good outcomes where we've been really able to add some extra diversity into the service, particularly in the area around Black and Asian minority ethnics or BAME staff. Traditionally, we have struggled to make progress in this area, and I think it's only fair to acknowledge the work of the Positive Action Team, Equality, Diversity, Inclusion Advisors over the success that the previous campaign had in that BAME area. Unfortunately, it's not all good news, as we were a little disappointed. I certainly was disappointed around the gender diversity that we're able to track. It does coincide with some of the more significant impacts of COVID, of the positive action events and engagement events we had planned around gender were the ones that were most affected by the national lockdowns. But I think overall the service is happy with the outcomes there. They're kind of shown in paragraphs 9A and 9B quite nicely. But there is a full breakdown in Appendix A, which is on page 57 and 58 of your bundle. Ultimately, the last campaign saw 23 new starters enter the service. 16 of those were new recruits, and they're currently away undertaking their initial training at the Fire Service College. There were 4 migrations of staff across from the on-call service into the whole time, which is an added benefit for us for many reasons. If it's an added attraction to recruit on-call staff, but also it means we can bring across some experience into the whole time. So we're not just starting with complete new starters to the service. And following that vein, we also undertook 3 inter-service transfers, which again brings qualified and experienced staff into the service. I think it is worthy of note that actually the entire recruitment campaign was run through COVID-19. That posed particular challenges to the recruitment team and HR team, and I'm especially grateful of how they rose to that challenge to continue to bring staff into the service. So looking forward, we continue to see a relatively high workforce turnover for a number of reasons. Some of that is just around the age of the workforce. Some is impacted by the pensions issues currently ongoing, and some is impacted by some natural attrition that is common across the sector. But it does mean we are likely to need to recruit in 2022, and that's pretty much contained from paragraph 14 onwards of the paper. So the purpose of the paper and the request is actually to seek permission to or authority to recruit new whole-time staff. And that activity would, subject to your approval, begin in July 2021, which would see us undertake another full recruitment campaign, including another series of extensive activities around positive action to really improve the workforce and diversity of our really improve the diversity and inclusion of our workforce to fully represent the community as best as we can do. If it's agreeable by the Fire Authority, the succession plan kind of suggests that we may need up to 30 new firefighters in 2022. So that is the request. But what I will suggest is that, or I will give my commitment to, the recruitment process would be run very much as it has been in the last times, that it would look at on-call migrations, inter-service transfers and new recruits. And we would do every feasible option to make sure new people entering the service meet as much of the diversity as the community as we can possibly do. Thank you, Chairman. Any questions?
That's always been our aspiration. Betty, can you ask your question? And also, Betty, if you agree, move the recommendations when you're done.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, I think you, to some extent, you've actually answered some of my questions, because I was going to ask how robust were our positive action initiatives to try and recruit more people from the ethnic communities and more women into the service. I know I've done a lot of work with you on this, but I would want to know, is there any extra steps we could take to achieve our outcomes in terms of diversity of the workforce? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. As you know, I think it's fair to say there will always be room for us to improve in this area, and I take that as a personal challenge that every year we need to continue to improve and move forward and forward. I think whilst COVID was difficult for us for particularly recruitment, it did shine some great innovation and some great practices where, through the use of technology, whether it be Teams, Zoom or whatever platform, we were able to reach more of the community in a way that landed better with them, which I think is probably the reason why we've attracted more BAME candidates this time around. And I think as we come out of COVID, the challenge that I'm going to lay to my teams is to continue all of that online stuff and add it onto the practical and physical stuff that we can do, so that actually we're taking the best of COVID and pre-COVID. And I'm hopeful the next recruitment campaign will see even better results than what we've achieved this time around. I think it's worth also saying we are pretty much at the leading edge when it comes to positive action across the sector, and certainly our recruitment numbers and diversity of those recruitment numbers are reflecting that. So I think whilst I will always say there's more to do, and I totally agree there is more to do, I think we also need to look at where we've been successful and kind of recognise and share that with other services as well, that we're in quite a good place, but it's not enough. And I will keep coming back to that. It's not enough. We need to continue to stretch and challenge ourselves.
Well, that is true, Callum. Ever since I've been chairman, and when SPS was vice chairman, we were always willing to push the envelope to try and broaden our appeal and get more diverse fire and rescue officers. Actually got it right there. Bill, you're next.
Thank you. Yes. 370 people applied for the position, 23 selected. We only wanted 23, so there must be some people who met the criteria, but we didn't need the numbers. Will they be offered the chance to apply as a continuing service, or have you got to start all over again?
Thank you. That's a great question. With recruitment, I kind of feel we're walking a tightrope here around getting the right people with the right skills who can undertake the job, which is a really important factor. I can't get away from firefighting is a very unique job that does present some unique risks. So we must make sure we get the best people in to be able to undertake that role. But equally, we need to keep refreshing that deck to make sure we are seeing the results of our positive action and seeing an improved diversity pool in the application rate. So where I would say is I absolutely wouldn't look to offer employment to anyone who doesn't meet the criteria, because I don't think that's right, fair or just. But I do think there is that continual need to make sure our positive action and the diversity pool coming into the service is as diverse as possible. To do that best, we will need to continually go out to recruit. I think anyone who looked to do on-call migration who was suitable to a point, we would look to work through options with them to make sure we're able to satisfy their needs and develop them, but equally still maintain that commitment to improving the equality, diversity, inclusion across the service. So I'm probably sitting on the fence with that answer, if that's okay, Councillor, but hopefully you'll see the reasons for that.
Okay, so no more speakers. I'll move the recommendations on page 51, number 2, A and B. Will the Vice Chair second?
Seconded, Chair.
All in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you, Callum. 16, service delivery update, pages 59 to 64 of your agenda pack, and it's back to you, Callum.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm exceptionally proud of this paper, and I think it kind of shows the level of commitment and effort that the whole service has put in across the period. So this paper pretty much covers from April 20 to March 2021. It's almost a year summary of the work. And I'd ask members to reflect that it's been a tough year. It's been a challenging year for the country and the service alike. But despite that, and despite the challenges it's posed to us, the service has risen to those challenges and I think has performed particularly well. I draw your attention to a couple of areas, but won't go through the entire paper. Paragraph 6, the increase in number of home fire safety checks that we've been able to deliver despite COVID and despite all the stuff, that's increased by around 20%. Paragraph 8, the number of fire protection audits. I'm particularly passionate in this area around making sure our community's businesses are as compliant to the law as possible, and we support them to do that. So the number of inspections we've delivered across the area has increased significantly. I'd also like to highlight the new challenges we faced in around the high-rise build and the building risk review post Grenfell. That is, so paragraph 9. In addition to all that work, another 109 high-rise buildings have been inspected just to make sure that the buildings are compliant as they are with the law and that our crews are familiar with them and able to respond as quickly and as effectively as possible if we need to. Paragraph 12 highlights a reduction in fire deaths. Whilst any fire death is too many, in my view, it's positive to note that downward trend. And also paragraph 16, the on-call availability, which I have to confess has been significantly impacted on the positive side because of COVID around furloughed staff and people working from home. The on-call availability has gone up. And also throughout all of this, we supported the LLR Local Resilience Forum. And paragraph 21 is only a small paragraph, but please don't underestimate the sheer work and effort that has gone into that. And I think, as I opened with, I'm so proud of the service and how we have responded. I think my challenge and my team's challenge is, but it's got to continue. We've got to improve it. It's almost that continual arc of improvement now. But I think it's really important to note that the significant improvements we've made in what was a challenging year. And I hope the authority are assured and recognising of the effort that the whole service has put in. This isn't just about me and my senior team. This is about every single member of our staff that we've got and the volunteers that also support us. So thank you, Chairman. Happy to take any questions.
No, I think you've done very, very well this year, Callum. Yes, Bill.
Thank you. Yes, just information. We were talking about buying a new technical term, I don't know, but high reach ladder. How far we've got with that, and what's delivery time on that?
Yep, so I'm really happy to update you on that one. The procurement process or invitation to tender closed last week. We now have received, we only received one tender, which, if I'm honest, was what we were expecting. We're just going through that tender now just to make sure it meets the requirements that we've specified, and we will then look to commission the build of that appliance. I can't give you an exact timetable because I don't know about the factory slots and the chassis availability, but I would imagine that will be somewhere in the region of 12 to 18 months before we take delivery of that vehicle. But it's progressing really well, and that will be a improved capability for our fleet and our service of a 42-metre turntable ladder, which is increased from the circa 27-30 metres. So it's a real increased provision for the service area.
It'd be really good to see that. You can bring it to a meeting and park it outside so we can all have a look at it, won't it, when it's done?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes, Neil. Neil's just moving forward, Callum. Hang on. Here he comes.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you, could I congratulate Callum in respect of the performance of the fire service as outlined in this report. My question is in relation to paragraph 9 and the fire safety audits following the Grenfell fire and the inspections of the high-rise premises. I appreciate that the report indicates that the review has resulted in a number of fire safety concerns being raised, which are being addressed by working with the property owners. What will be the follow-up to ensure that those concerns are indeed being addressed and the awful tragedy of a Grenfell is not going to be repeated? Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question. First of all, if I can assure you, we have no residential buildings within our service area that are clad in the same way that Grenfell was. But obviously Grenfell was more than just the cladding issues. So the building risk reviews that have been undertaken have identified some areas for concern. Our fire protection team are working with the property owners around resolving those areas of concern. Each one will be taking on its individual merits, and anyone that needs enforcement activity will progress up to the enforcement activity. And we have a very good track record within the service of utilising our legal powers to enforce the fire safety order when it's necessary. I think my answer is I would always prefer to reach the outcome of a safe and effective building in compliance with the law. And if we can do that through education and conversation, I am content to. If we're not, then I am content to enforce those buildings to the maximum of our power. But I think the outcome is what we need to focus on, which is around those safe and effective buildings in compliance with the law. In preparation and recognition of some of the pressures that the Grenfell inquiry recommendations may make, the authority did improve the increase in whole-time establishment in that area in the last budget. So it's an area of the business we're looking to grow to meet the challenge head on rather than shrink or keep stable. So as well as us increasing the establishment by 2 more inspecting officers, we also have in the region of around about £600,000 grant funding where we will be looking to further increase that establishment, but that will be on a temporary basis given the nature of the funding from central government. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, Sue.
Thank you for that report, Callum. One of the things that I'm interested in, you talked about the number of home fire safety checks and so on that have been carried out during that period, which is very positive. I know it's also an equalities issue because it's about addressing the needs of perhaps some of the more vulnerable and hard to reach sections within the communities. And I was wondering how it was matching up to our equalities targets in that area. And I'm also interested in, with the number of high-rise buildings in the pipeline to be built, which would show a considerable increase in the city and possibly in some of the towns in the county, will there be an increase in the establishment of people to address the needs of those in the increased numbers of high rises, not the number that we have already, because obviously the need is going to change significantly within the city, particularly in the urban areas where streets are narrow and access might be quite difficult. How are we going to manage that?
Thank you, Councillor Barton. So if I address the home fire safety checks, first of all, so whereas previously, and I'm talking probably decades ago, the fire and rescue service would just go out and undertake home fire safety checks in any premises that happened to ring them up and ask for it. And that would include multi-million-pound mansions that could quite easily fit their own home fire smoke alarms and conduct home fire safety checks. We're much more focused now to make sure we are responding to the needs of the community that need us most. We can't reach the whole county. We can't reach every property. So it's about focusing down to the most vulnerable and making sure that we meet their needs as best as possible. Throughout COVID particularly, we have been focusing even more so on the vulnerable, to the point where there are some really upsetting but heartwarming stories in the same breath that actually our community safety educators that have continued to go out and meet with vulnerable members of the community through COVID are the only people that they have seen for the entire durations of lockdown, and their vulnerability has changed, and we've been able to identify that and support them through it, because we are still one of the organisations that have been getting out there and really kind of taking that nurturing approach with the community. So again, a really, really, I think, positive. where we haven't just rested on our laurels. We haven't just reverted back to telephone calls. We've still gone out to meet the community that need us the most. And those referrals are also taken through from the local authorities and from partner organisations and the third sector around making sure the vulnerable people are targeted first. So when it comes to that, I'm very assured that we're doing the best we can do to meet the needs of our community, and will continue to do so. With regards to high rise and future planning, we've always got one eye on the future. The integrated risk management plan looks at the potential areas of growth in the county, and as a statutory partner in building control, we're also consulted around new builds across the service area, whether it be the city or the county or Rutland. So we're looking at the new buildings coming in. As I've said, we've already increased the establishment in the fire protection arena to make sure we're able to adapt to new legislation, which I believe will be coming shortly, the outcomes from the Grenfell Tower inquiry, and indeed growth within the community. We did that independently because we knew the fire protection area was an area we would need to grow in, and also that's been further supported by the grant funding. That would be great if that could be moved into base budget over the coming years, but I have to make the assumption, or I can only deal with what's in front of me around the temporary nature of that grant funding. So we'll grow the department while we're able to afford to do so. If that grant funding ceases, we've got some interesting areas to go with. Just referring you back to the new build, street access, and the city potentially becoming more congested, the new aerial appliance actually will be able to deploy itself in more places than our current aerial appliance, simply because of the way it jacks and is able to deploy in a much. It reduces the weight and pressure points on each of the jacks and the wheel axles, which means we can get it into more places and deploy it in more places than our current fleet. And that was always part of our future planning when we spec'd that vehicle, to make sure it didn't just meet the need for today and the historic need, but also where the developments are likely to take us in the future. So hopefully I've answered all your questions there, Councillor Barton. If not, please feel free to come back.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to ask any questions? No other questions, Callum. So I'll move the recommendations, which are on page 59 to A, B and C. Can you second, Vice Chair?
Recommendations seconded, Chair.
All in favour? Thank you. Final reports on the public part of the agenda is the on-call review project. These are on pages 65 to 74, and it's you again, Callum.
Thank you, Chairman. Simply because of the number of new members, forgive me if I've already covered this with any of you, but just to make sure, I'll just cover the base of the responsibilities of an on-call firefighter, just so members are completely appraised. The on-call contingent of our service are an incredibly dedicated bunch of individuals. They go about their life pretty much as a normal individual, a member of the community. They have a day job, whatever that may be, or they tend a home, or they care for others, whatever that individual responsibility will, but they carry a little alerter on their waist belt, and when we need them to attend an emergency, we'll send a signal to that alerter. They stop what they're doing, they respond immediately to the station within a 5-minute window. They get on the fire engine and they go out to an emergency incident, and they deal with any emergency incident that happens to come into the service in that area. Once they've done that, they come back, they wash their hands, they leave the fire station, and they go back to their daily life or their job. It takes a tremendous amount of commitment. Generally speaking, those on-call firefighters will give us either between 60 and 120 hours a week of their time, where they will stay within 5 minutes of that fire station. It's an incredible commitment, and it's an incredible commitment to their local community, as well as to the fire and rescue service and the wider LLR area. But it's difficult for people, so they'll need a sympathetic employer who has the ability and the will to let them leave their day job, or they have a very understanding family that will see them run out the door at birthdays, anniversaries, children's graduations, whatever it may be. So it's a massive commitment, and I really take my hat off to them. The on-call system is run across the nation, and I think it's fair to say over the last 20 years, the on-call system has started to see some cracks appear in it, in the way that society has evolved. People don't necessarily live and work in the same town or village that they live in. That potentially has reduced the amount of availability they're able to offer. And certainly over the last years, we've seen the on-call availability decline across the country, not only with LLR. So as you would expect, as a good employer and as a good fire and rescue service, we're keen to understand the pressures on those on-call staff and to look to be able to retain, reward and recognise them in as many places as we can do. And I think this paper kind of updates where the on-call review has looked to do that and look to improve the conditions where we can. And again, without going off on a massive tangent, there are some areas we can't go because the grey book terms and conditions of employment that cover the on-call and the whole-time staff are nationally agreed through the National Joint Council, and we aren't necessarily able to change that without either a local collective agreement or a national change, both of which can be particularly difficult to get. So I think rather than go through each individual area, I'm sure members would have looked over the Appendix A, which is pages 71, 72 and 73. And these are the areas we are either introducing or looking to introduce to improve that retention, recognitions and reward from the service. And before I hand you back to the chair around any questions you may have, I think the other thing I would like to say is on-call firefighters aren't particularly financially well rewarded. It's not a significantly well-paying role, and people don't generally do on-call firefighting for the money. They generally do it to serve their community and really give something back to their community. And I don't think we can underestimate the impact that has on the individuals' lives and their families' lives. So I think as a service, we are looking to recognise, retain and reward as much as we can do where we're able to. And the appendix takes you through that. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Good. We've got Betty and then Sue. Betty.
Thank you very much. It's good to note that we're actually getting more on-call firefighters coming out during COVID. My question really is around post-COVID, when they possibly, those are part-time going back to their jobs. And I wonder whether or not after the furlough is finished, what planning is going to be put in place to ensure that we have enough on-call firefighters to meet our needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Newton. I think the honest answer, and please don't take this as anything other than trying to find a positive in what is an awful situation of COVID, is it shows some opportunities for us. So I think post-COVID, there will be a significant number more people working at home. That potentially increases our ability to increase the on-call establishment, to give them something a little bit different, something to get them out of their house where they may be working and living in the same place. So I think there is opportunities post-COVID. I think we also need to think quite creatively. With a lot of people working at home, couldn't our fire stations offer them that opportunity? Could they come and use an office in our on-call fire station to work from home or work from our fire station, as long as they provide on-call cover at the same time? So I think you're right, and one of the previous reports has really highlighted the increase in on-call availability, and that's brilliant through COVID, but I would expect it to drop a little bit as we come back to normality. But I think where I'm trying to say is we are very open to the different options that the post-COVID world may present to us, and we're already exploring them in a number of areas. Thank you, Chairman.
Very good. Thank you. Sue.
Thanks. It was great to hear about the idea of the office for people doing remote working whilst they're on call. I was interested in the statements that are in the report about training and the reduction from 24 months to 10 months so that people become fully trained more quickly. I was also interested in the idea of on-call apprenticeships, and I was wondering whether or not this matched the training level for those that are full-time firefighters. And with the reduction in time, does that mean that they're having more intense training, more hours during a week than previously? And does that affect recruitment, because people with other jobs might not have the time to put in those extra hours over a shorter period as opposed to fewer hours over a longer period? And is there a parity between those that have done the on-call training and those that have done the full-time training, so that there could perhaps be movement between the status as people get more experienced?
Thank you, Councillor Barton. I think if I start with the end question, actually, the on-call firefighters are trained in the same operational techniques, tactics and equipment as whole-time firefighters. There is, within Leicestershire, there is no distinguishment between on-call firefighters and whole-time firefighters in the operational environment on the fire ground. So a on-call fire engine is mobilised to exactly the same fire instance or emergency instance as the whole-time appliances, and on the fire ground they are firefighters, where the on-call and the whole-time aspect is irrelevant to any commander on the fire ground. The difference comes between whole-time and on-call of when the on-call have resolved the operational incident, they return back to station and go around their normal lives, whereas the whole-time go back to station and commence their other activities such as home fire safety checks, community engagement, school visits, fire protection visits, updating risk information. That's where the difference is between the whole-time and on-call. But in the operational environment, they are identical and they respond to the identical instance, and they work and support each other through those incidents in an absolutely fantastic way. There is a discrepancy between the training levels of a whole-time and on-call. So, for instance, our whole-time staff that are currently away are undertaking 10 weeks of training, which covers operational and indeed the other areas I've discussed. The on-call elements will cover the basic operational elements so they can start to go out on a fire engine, and over the next currently 24 months, hopefully coming down to 10 months, they then build on those skills and add more and more skills into that to enable them to undertake more and more roles. The proposed change in the time from 24 to 10 months does mean they will have more intense training. But interestingly, that's at the request of the on-call staff rather than the service dictating it to them. And the reason for that, forgive me, this will be relatively crude language and I don't mean it in any way disrespectfully. They want to feel more useful to their station and their department on the fire engine. And to do that, they want the skills in a quicker and increased way. Our challenge for us is to make sure they have the flexibility and options to do that in their lifestyle that they choose, whether it be with family or work related. So I think honestly, there isn't a one template that firefighters must fit to get those skills. We have to offer them 2 or 3 different options so that they can make that fit their work life and their home life. But the change in timeline has been driven by the on-call staff themselves, which I think is really positive, and I think that's great that that's my challenge to fulfill that and my team's challenge to fulfill that. But it won't compromise on the skills and the training that they're delivered. As I've said earlier, absolutely our staff need to be equipped and the best people to do their jobs, so we won't compromise on that. I think I've got all of your questions there, Councillor Barton, but if I haven't, please nudge me on any that I may have missed.
Thank you. I think the only thing really was to do with the parity of the qualification, which you did touch on, that an on-call's qualification would be just as valued as a whole-time, as if they were applying for work with either within the same authority or with a different fire and rescue service.
Absolutely. Let me just put that in a caveat. With us, that is absolutely the case. And I think we've paid testament to that at the last 3 or 4 recruitment campaigns. We have migrated on-call staff into the whole time as part of that recruitment campaign. I can't comment for other authorities or other services, and I don't believe they mirror that same level of acceptance, which I won't criticise them for. I'll recognise our forward thinking in that arena of we're one of the few that does that already, and I think that's a positive as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Firstly, Bill.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, page 67, item 15. There's 30 recommendations there. Some 18 approved, some rejected, some deferred, some not started on yet. Any idea when they might be started on and the reasons for that?
Thank you. Well, as with everything, we have to balance the organisational capacity to deliver recommendations in a decent and well finished way, rather than just starting everything and not being ever able to finish it. We have to recognise the on-call service is supported by the whole-time service that has also been delivering a number of other tasks. So I think I'm relatively comfortable that we don't start everything at once. I think it has to be done in a pragmatic way to reach a good outcome for all of those involved. Certainly, I know the district managers and the group managers are building their plans for the next year of how and when they're going to deliver that. So I'm relatively confident that in the next 12 months, all of those recommendations will be either delivered and embedded or being delivered and working towards embedded within the next 12 months. Some of the recommendations we weren't able to support, whether that was the project board or indeed the senior management team, and that's because of how it linked to some of the national mechanisms around the Grey Book and deviations thereof. And as you would expect, the due diligence was done, and before we make decisions on the others, we have asked for some more information to come forward to make sure we're making the right decisions rather than just only taking half the information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding recruitment. In fact, we have dealt on it earlier in the report. It comes to about 343 or so frontline workers, frontline firefighters. How many on-call firefighters do we have in our role? And secondly, my question is, why are they not getting better preference when they do recruitment? That's my question, Chair.
Do you get that, Callum?
I did, thank you. So I'll start with your words around better preference for recruitment to come into the whole time service. If that's the authority's appetite, we can absolutely do that. I think you recognise one group of staff there at the detriment of improving our equality, diversity, inclusion across the workforce. So all of our on-call stations are in the more rural areas, part of the counties. So you are pulling from a relatively small pool of individuals who live and work within the fire service. So you're probably closing your opportunity to recruit across the whole county down by about 95%. Of those areas that have on-call stations, they are predominantly lived in by white British people. So we could look to migrate more staff across into the whole time from the on-call. You run the risk of losing them from the on-call, which is a little bit counterproductive, but you also will damage our ability to improve the diversity of the organisation. So we feel at the moment the blended approach of taking new starters, on-call migrations and transferees into the service is the best solution for meeting a number of challenges, firstly around recruiting firefighters, but equally improving the quality, diversity and inclusion, equally bringing skills and experience into the service so that we don't just have new starters. When it comes to numbers of on-call staff, it does fluctuate pretty much on a daily and weekly basis. At the moment, we have probably in the region of around 225 on the establishment, but that does fluctuate, and that does actually include a number of whole-time staff that on their off-duty days deliver on-call availability as well. So approximately 30% of those staff have a whole-time and an on-call contract. So hopefully that answers your question, Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, we have no more questions, so I'll move the recommendations are on page, I've lost them now, page of the honour. I've got those. Okay, well, I'll move the recommendations. Okay, Vice Chairman?
Yes, of course. Seconded, Chair.
Thank you. All in favour? Very good. Thanks for that, Callum. Very extensive update. So next one is 18 urgent items. We don't have any. Date of next meeting is the 28th of July. I may not be here, but Councillor Pantling will chair the meeting. I might be here, but I just can't say at the moment with COVID and government regulations where you'll be. So agenda item 20 is exclusion of the press and public, so I have to read this. I move this under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972. The public be excluded for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information. Appointment of the Chief Fire and Rescue Officer as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2. Mobilising system as defined in paragraph 3, and that in all circumstances of the case, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. I move, Vice Chair.
Seconded, Chair.
I now need, so we're now in confidential, also need to ask that Callum Fate, the interim CFO, and the assistant CFOs leave the meeting at this stage for these items, and Anna will let you know when to rejoin the meeting. So if we just wait for those two guys to go.